Today, we're looking at Robert Oster's Emerald. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Robert Oster's Emerald is a green ink. Yep, to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Pilot Metropolitan with a medium nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is a chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see that it flees, it runs away. Now there's a very light minty green left behind, a darker green comes in, and then blue across the top, which gives this color some of its depth as a green. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And there's no difference at all. If I covered up the label at the top, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the two of them, which means I expect there to be no real resistance for this ink. And speaking of resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let my smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I actually get a surprising result based on the other stuff that I saw. It seems to handle being highlighted 3 days later very well. It spread very slightly. It spread very slightly. It didn't feather out and it did not become illegible at all. It makes me quite confident to use this in a note-taking situation. Water completely reactivates, starts pulling it up off the page, and while there's a lot of green left behind, if you look across the top edge of it, you start to see some of the white of the paper coming through. In fact, even through the green, you see some of the dots of the Rhodia dot pad. That means to me that water is likely all that I would need to clean this from my pen. Now, Pen Flush does everything the water does and then some, which is usually what you would expect in this kind of situation. It's almost all going away. It's only the lightest green left behind, but that's only 30 seconds of that Pen Flush being there, and then I just dab it up. I do think that water is all you would need to get this out of your pen though. But there's a spot for bleach, so we might as well test it. And bleach obliterates it. It is gone. And just placing the paper towel down where the bleach spreads because of that, you see that it just leaves this blue ring around, which is pretty cool. But that's the part that gives this ink its depth in color. I'm going to mention that just during this part a little bit. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Emerald has a viscosity of 2.32, which makes it very normal as an ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done with the extra fine and medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Robert Oster's Emerald has an average dry time of 11 seconds, which makes it a faster drying ink. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at Clairefontaine. This isn't bleed. This is transfer from the page underneath where I was just sloppy. Same story. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen. It does show a little bit of shading. It shows some of the only shading that we get from this ink, where the Rob of Robert is darker than the Ert. So we get a little bit of shading there, very, very little. Same tone for the extra fine. It has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade in the writing. It's a very nice shade of green, just no shading in this writing. The same tone of green for the medium has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and I'm not seeing any shading in this writing. It took 13 seconds to dry. If I didn't say it, the extra fine took 7 seconds to dry, so twice as long. Now the scrubby for both of them show color variation. The scrubby lies, and the scrubby lies a lot with this ink. The scrubby lies it shows a lot of color variation. I don't see any color variation up here. I only saw a little bit with the 1.1. The smear says you can likely recover it. So I look at Tomoe River. Tomoe River, this bleed spot is where I'm putting it on stupid thick with the scrubby, so I don't tend to really worry about that. So it otherwise has no bleeding. It does have ghosting because it's Tomoe River. Excuse me. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, a couple spots of showing a little bit of shading. At the top of the R, we get a little bit of shading. And it looks like just a spot on the T, a little bit of shading. Other than that, no real shading with the 1.1. The extra fine is a noticeably lighter tone. It has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading. It takes 10 seconds to dry. The medium is a noticeably darker tone again. So we go from a darker to noticeably lighter, noticeably darker again. This is about the same tone that I got with the 1.1. The medium gets no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 24 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows us no color variation. We didn't get any kind of color variation, so we weren't expecting it on this paper. And the smear says you likely can't recover it. So I look at Rhodia paper. There's bleed through spot only where I'm doing the scrubby. Again, I don't really count that against an ink. Otherwise, there's no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. I was looking at this ink and I was really surprised by how much it doesn't shade. So much about it makes me think it should, and it really doesn't. 5 seconds to dry with the extra fine. The medium, noticeably darker tone. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 9 seconds to dry. This is a little bit darker a tone than I got with the 1.1. And the extra fine is a noticeably light tone compared to the other two. Now, so we get plenty of shade through the pen. That's the shading that you get from this ink, not so much in the writing. The scrubby here shows us color variation. We didn't get any color variation. It lied, as it's frequently going to here. The smear test says you could likely recover it. So I tested this on the yellow Rhodia, see what it does with the color. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. And as far as the color goes, I mean, our shifts in color, our shifts in color tone hold strong, but it is lighter. It is lighter as a color, which it's very nice. It's very nice on white paper. It's very nice on yellow paper. But it doesn't alter the green. It just makes it lighter. Where frequently we can see inks sort of alter color for being on that yellow paper. The 1.1 has no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shading. The extra fine, that noticeably lighter tone with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 5 seconds to dry. The medium, way darker than we got with the extra fine. Way darker. It's darker even than the 1.1. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 11 seconds to dry. And the scrubby is going to lie to us. The scrubby is going to tell us to expect some color variation. We don't get any color variation. The smear test says you could likely recover this. I'm going to come back to this idea of being able to see exactly what an ink looks like. The swab does, well, this is my chemical test swab. This side hasn't been touched with anything. And we see the lighter in the light and the darker in the dark, but largely I don't rely on color swabs for this reason. That it's so hard to see what a color actually is on the swab versus here. This makes me feel like I should see a lot of color variation. I don't see it. This makes me feel like I should see a lot of color variation. I don't see it. Now the scrubby to me has been a very reliable non-writing method. The most reliable method I have found is the writing samples, which is why I just do so many of them. So I tested TWSBI paper. TWSBI paper gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gave no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine, noticeably lighter tone with no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium becomes a noticeably darker tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine lied, said to expect some color variation that we did not get. The medium didn't lie for the first time. We didn't get lied to in the scrubby, really. It didn't show any color variation. We didn't get any color variation. And the smear test says you likely can't recover this. So why not? I went and I looked at Leuchtturm paper, which gave us no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Noticeably lighter tone again than the 1.1. It only took 4 seconds to dry. This is a very nice green color. I just wish it was showing a few more properties, but it is a very, very pleasant green to look at. The medium, noticeably darker. Definitely darker than what we get with the 1.1. So we get 3 completely different tones of this green without really altering the green we're seeing. We're just seeing it in different saturation levels, which is pretty nice. The medium gives us no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. It took 7 seconds to dry, which is very manageable, beyond very manageable. Scrubby for both shows us lies. The left side of the medium is very light and then it gets dark. That's why I say both are lying to us. Both show color variation. We don't get the color variation. The smear test, I don't think you would be able to recover this if you smeared while you were writing. And that's all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Emerald, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. Now, complement could also mean draw attention to it to show how fantastic it is. And I chose Robert Oster's Graphite because as a gray ink, it looks like pencil with this amazing green ink all around it. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. So what do I think of Robert Oster's Emerald? I think the color is amazing. I think the swab says we should have real depth in its color, and it comes through when we look at the chromatography. It should be there, and greens can do it. This green doesn't. Great color, no shading. It's not a horrible green. Again, the tone is amazing, but it lacks bringing that depth out that the swab and the chromatography shows it should be able to doing. This green is not living up to its potential. Thanks for watching.